feel like your brain is a browser with around about 25 tabs open and you can't find the tab that you're desperately trying to find? Or maybe you walk into a room or you start a project and you have all these really important things that you're doing, but somehow you just get distracted. And even when you know you're distracted, it's really, really hard to get back on point and just think, calm down, this fizzy brain that I've got, and to get back actually into productivity mode, or even vaguely remembering what you went into the kitchen for. Firstly, you're not broken. This is completely normal. And you might be thinking, I wonder if I've got ADHD. I exhibit a lot of the sort of ADHD type behaviors. And I never used to. I don't think actually I would be diagnosed with ADHD. I don't fulfill enough of the criteria. But if you're getting to that stage where you just think, actually have no real control over what my mind does and where my brain goes, you are not alone. There is a very real reason why your brain glitches, and today we're going to talk about that. First, before we do that, I have to say hello to Ardis, because Ardis literally watches all my stuff, and I just wanted to say hi, Ardis. I hope you're having a great day at work, and keep up the amazing work that you are doing too. Ardis is making huge positive changes in her life, and she's seeing the results as well. So welcome to my channel. My name is Kate Hartley. I share a weekly video with you every Monday around something related to menopause. I'm standing up for a change because I have just finished writing my first ever book, and I have to say my bum never wants to see a seat again. So I've converted my antique desk into a raised desk, if you could see it. I've got my ergonomic keyboard on boxes, and I've got my ergonomic mouse and mouse pad on boxes. It's not very attractive, it's not very elegant, but it works. So a lot of women feel that when they get sort of perimenopause, menopausal years, they just feel, they've got the brain fog. That's quite normal, and just feeling very distracted with very fragmented memories and thought processes, and also productivity flows. That is just like me. I'm probably a highly functioning erratic person. I have huge amounts on, a lot of stress in my life at the moment. However, stress does make it worse, and your hormones changing also makes that worse. So what I'm going to do is explain the sort of the sciencey bit behind it, and also give you a few easy steps that you can do to manage it holistically. If you take HRT or not, it doesn't matter. All of these things that I suggest to you today are going to make a profound impact on that busy brain. And also, I think mainly just understand this is a process. It will eventually settle down, and the more you stress over it, the more you get frustrated with yourself, the more you are going to compound that sense of fragmentation and disconnection and just a complete, what the heck am I doing? Why am I in this room kind of feeling? And so we'll dive into that right now. Firstly, what does ADHD stand for? It's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It affects the executive function of the brain, which deals with things like productivity, planning, organization, emotional regulation, that sort of thing. But hormones, especially estrogen, plays a really important role. I mean, every cell in our body has an estrogen receptor in it, but around that sort of executive function of the brain, when estrogen falls, it has a negative impact on our dopamine levels, so our reward hormones, acetylcholine, and other brain chemicals that influence memory, motivation, and emotional clarity. So when your hormones are changing, your brain is also going through those changes. And when you think about if estrogen levels are falling, well, then that does have that negative impact on your prefrontal cortex. So it does make you more forgetful, it makes you more distracted, your thoughts are more fragmented. Obviously, it can create emotional dysregulation. So you have the mood swings, feel more irritable, you might feel more frustrated more easily, you have a reduced resilience to stress. And all of these things are related to your falling hormones. It's also worth noting that progesterone also declines, as do all of the sex hormones. Progesterone is really what helps you feel more calm. So when that is also falling, you'll have a greater susceptibility to feeling more frazzled and more irritable, and your patience is less. And then with falling testosterone, that really has quite an impact on our motivation, our get up and go, our energy levels. And so all of this has a negative impact on how your brain actually works. But it doesn't mean to say your brain is broken. It's just undergoing a few changes. And when you can understand the changes and why they're happening, it sort of takes away that stress. There have been times when I've thought, am I getting early dementia? particularly in the thick of it when I really had brain fog badly to begin with, before I started to make the lifestyle changes, before I knew about everything that I've learned since. My brain fog was horrendous. I used to be hyper organized, looked after a lot of people in my corporate role. I mean, like nearly 90 people. I knew what everybody was doing. I knew what my schedule was without even having to look at a schedule. Yeah, I was like pinging. I knew exactly where I was going. And then perimenopause hit, and it was just like somebody had poured fog through my ears and had just mushed my brain. And all of a sudden, I just didn't have that clarity. I didn't have the memory. My thoughts are fragmented. I am quite distracted, and I have tools and schedules and plans and digital apps that I use these days, which I will sort of chat about in a few minutes, that help me stay on track. But there are still afternoons when I know I've got like a massive stuff to do. Right, like right now, I need to publish my book. I'm still working on my cover designs. My first option was just like rubbish. I'm opening a new Substack account, and I've got so many different things that I'm doing, loads of things. So I literally put a schedule together of the three key big areas, and then broke those down into more manageable steps that lasts around a sort of a 2 week period. And then every 2 weeks, I refresh that schedule. And whenever I go back to it, I'm thinking, oh, I've done that. Didn't do that one, didn't do that one, didn't do that. Oh, I must remember I've got to do that. Because also, half the problem with having a schedule is you've got to remember to look at the bloody thing. And when your days are really, really busy, I don't look at my schedule every single day. I should do, I know I should, and I don't. And it's just a fact of being human. So don't beat yourself up about not being this super productive ninja woman. Just be glad that you're still here, you're still fighting the battle, and with a few tips and maybe a few tweaks, you can make a big, big difference to how you feel, up here, and how well you manage to stay organized. And do not berate yourself on those days when you just can't function, because there are those days that happen, and it might not be a whole day. It might be you wake up and just think, oh god, my brain's all over the shop. And that happens to me, particularly when I'm under really, really high pressure stress. You will find that I can look in the cutlery drawer and think, I don't even know what I'm looking for. I can empty the dishwasher and the knives I put back with the spoons. Silly things like that. The thing that you need to understand too is if you are under a lot of pressure or a lot of stress, you may have lost your job. I know a few people that's happened to recently. Actually, it happened to me as well. Financial pressures, worry about the future, grief in the family. These sorts of things really knock your feet out from underneath you. The brain goes into this stress response. So our stress response is really fight, flight, or freeze. And a lot of us forget this freeze bit. The freeze is when your brain shuts down. You're overloaded. You've got too much on your plate. You're not feeling like you're coping. And one day your brain just decides, I can't do any more. I'm freezing. And that is your cortisol response. It's a completely human, normal response, so don't worry about it. But you do need to recognize that that is happening, because it can be quite frightening. It's just like, what the heck's happening to me? It's like my brain suddenly shut down. And actually, your brain has suddenly shut down because you've kept overloading it. And it's not your fault. There are probably things that you can control and improve, but it is not your fault. And when you can understand that you're in that freeze response, it might just take a few days. Normally, I recommend about 5, 7 at the latest, because if you let that not doing an awful lot stay for too much longer, then that also causes stress, that inertia, and then you find it more difficult to get back into things. So you don't want to stay out of the saddle for too long, but you do want to stay out of it long enough that you can just rest, reflect a bit, if you're able to. The thing is, even if you're in a high pressure environment and you're technically not able to, because let's be realistic. How many of us can think, oh, I'm just going to have 5 days off and sit and do nothing? I don't think that those people exist, or if they do, well, they're probably not super, super stressed. So it's about focusing on maybe 1 or 2 things that you absolutely can control, and just doing those, and then letting the rest of the other stuff go. And also really be mindful of what can you control and what can't you control. I always say to people, write down, get a piece of paper, divide it in half, brain dump everything that's bothering you, and then divide it into these 2 pieces of paper. So on the left-hand side, write down the things that you do have some control over. And on the right-hand side, write the things that you have absolutely no control over. All those things on the right-hand side, stop wasting your energy on it because you have no control over it, and choose 2 or 3 of the things that you can control and focus on those and work through them methodically. Ideally set some kind of timeline, but don't stress yourself out too much. Make it a realistic plus a bit of a buffer timeline if you're able to. If you are in that situation where literally the shit's hit the fan and you're trying to pick the pieces up and you cannot freeze, your body's in freeze, but you know you're you can't decide to stop swimming if you're in the middle of the lake. You have to keep swimming and you'll recover, you'll gather your breath when you get back. Delegate, ask people to help you. That's really when you need to reach out for support, whether that's a professional therapist, whether it's a family member, a good friend, somebody who's just going to sit and listen to you, or journal. If you have absolutely nobody or you don't want to share anything with anyone, journaling your thoughts and your worries can also be a real balm to help soothe those frazzled nerves. So it is not anything that's wrong with you, but you do lose your resilience to managing these things, including the brain fog, and it is down to the time of life. It will get better, and there are certain things that you can do to improve that situation considerably. So tips to help you maintain a healthy mind. Eat like a human. And you might think, oh God, here she goes talking about eating like a human again. It is absolutely crucial. If you're not feeding your body with the nutrients it needs, how can you possibly expect it to respond favorably? If you're filling it with the sugar and the ultra processed foods, you're causing that stress response, even, regardless of the other stress that might be happening in your life. So rather than thinking, okay, I've got to overhaul the whole thing, I tend to work on the theory that if you add in lots of good stuff, naturally by default, some of the not so good stuff you won't actually eat so much of, and eventually your taste buds change. You'll help your hormones to balance. Now, in an ideal world, you would cut out refined sugar or significantly reduce it, and you'll cut out ultra processed foods or significantly reduce them. The things to add in, make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Your body is, we have so much water in our bodies and we need plenty of water. There is the camp, I mean, there's quite a bit on social media at the moment saying you don't need so much water. We need water. Very few of us drink sufficient water that we need. In an ideal world, people say 6 to 8 glasses. Divide your body weight, your current body weight, in pounds. So say you weigh, just for ease, around 140 pounds. You want to drink half your body weight in fluid ounces. So if you're 140 pounds in weight, you want to aim for 70 fluid ounces of water. If you're having a lot of hot flushes or flashes, or you sweat a lot, you're getting night sweats, you're going to want to drink more water than that. But make sure that, I start my day off with some salt in my water, because if you're drinking lots of water and you're not replacing it with, the essential minerals through a healthy diet, then you might need to add a little bit of salt just to maintain your electrolyte balance. Of course, that also involves things like potassium and magnesium. Now, if you're eating food like a human and you're eating a wide range of fruits and vegetables, lean, healthy protein, complex carbs, we need carbs. There's nothing wrong with carbs. Yeah, you don't want the carbs that fall under the chocolate croissant and the cake and the cookies and the biscuits banner, but you want things like the oats, the sweet potato, the white potato, the red potato. I mean, I love those. Rice is not bad. Ideally eat wild rice or mix a wild rice with white rice, or eat the red Camargue rice, or just buy the basic brown rice from the supermarket. But essentially, if you're choosing between the donut or something with rice, just don't really worry about what the rice is, because rice is a proper food, donut is not. Okay, so really make sure that you are eating food like a human, because that way you don't need to worry about your magnesium supplement, your potassium supplement, your calcium supplement, this, that, and the other supplement. Lean, healthy protein is going to be one of the most important things that you can eat. It keeps you fuller for longer. It actually boosts your metabolism. It uses more energy to digest protein than it does your complex carbs and other things like that. So actually, if you change nothing, just by increasing more protein into your diet, your body is going to be using up more fuel, more energy, more calories to actually digest that protein. So protein is really important. It's the building block of our life. It helps to support your skin, helps to build lean muscle, keep your bones strong, etc., etc. So protein is an absolute yes, but also do include your fruits, your vegetables, and your complex carbs. Creatine is one of the few supplements I would suggest you have a look at, particularly if brain fog and just sluggish brain is a problem for you. It is known as, it helps you develop lean muscle tissue. However, it's also brilliant for cognition, and there's more and more research going into it and more studies showing, and I noticed this myself. I actually didn't notice any difference in my muscle tone when I took creatine, but I did notice in my brain, I was just like, oh my God, I've got clarity. My thoughts are really clear, and it was almost like somebody had opened a window or opened back the curtains on a window that had been shut for so long. And that was after about 6 weeks of taking creatine. So you do need to start and it builds up, but creatine has a really profound impact on your brain clarity and also, enhancing your memory function. Prioritize sleep like it's medicine, because it is. Sleep is when your body renews, it's when it flushes itself through, it detoxes, it also builds your lean muscle. It also flushes the brain cells, the glial cells in the brain. Sleep is, well, it's also torture, sleep deprivation. And that just goes to show how important it is. And it's really funny how not funny, weird, the fact that we really abuse our sleep patterns. And I know what it's like when you're on the sofa and you're watching something and you're so tired you can't even be bothered to get up to go to bed. But honestly, watching the next episode does not make you feel any less tired. It just negatively impacts your hormones. It probably means that your sleep is even more disturbed, because you've gone beyond your normal sleeping window, so you're almost overtired. That stresses the body out. You're releasing cortisol when this is happening. You might find that you're waking up at around sort of 2 a.m., 3 a.m., you're struggling to go back off to sleep. That can be a busy liver. So if you're not feeding yourself well, that can be a sign of a busy liver. But it also can be your cortisol levels. They're just erratic. And when you're under a lot of pressure, it does happen. Now, that cortisol can also and is often related to what you're eating and drinking before you're going to sleep. So avoid the booze before you go to bed. Avoid too much dark chocolate, even though a small amount is healthy for you. It's also quite high in caffeine. Avoid, obviously, caffeinated products before you go to bed. But some people say, and I think this is a really wise idea, is to have something that's dairy before you go to bed. I rarely ever eat a dessert, but often if I feel like something a little bit different, I'll have some Greek yogurt with some berries and maybe a few pumpkin seeds or something on top of that. It's a light dessert. It's high in protein, healthy fats, got some berries, you've got your antioxidants, but it's not going to spike your blood sugars. For people who have sweet desserts, or the biscuits and the cookies or whatever, the caramels after your evening meal, that is really setting you up for a poor night's sleep. And when you have a poor night's sleep, it does affect the ghrelin and the leptin, so your hungry hormones and your satiety hormones. Basically, you're hungrier more than you think you are, and it takes you longer to register that you're full. And that impact on your hunger hormones can last 2 to 3 days after a bad night's sleep. You'll also find that your brain is wanting you to reach for all the fast carbs, so the sweet things, the cakes, the cookies, because it knows it's tired, it needs fast energy, it knows that stuff's got the sugar in it. And so be really mindful of that. When you wake up feeling tired, one of the best things that you can do is really front load your day with healthy protein, and just make sure that protein is an integral part, a really important part of every single one of your meals. Next one is just get organized. Try microtasking. So instead of looking at your to-do list, like how many pages long is it, just choose 1 or 2 or maybe 3 key things that you need to get done, and then really focus on them at the time that's best for you. So I think most of us are more productive in the morning. You can, get these tasks off the list early, and then you feel accomplished that you've done them. If, for instance, you're one of these people that can work more productively at night, well, then leave those more tricky things to do at nighttime, but make sure that you get them off that list. And you can always break those down into smaller bite-sized pieces. I use Trello. Trello is a free app. I use it on my desktop and on my phone. And literally my life is on Trello. When I buy a new house, I've got a whole property board. I've got a whole board for my book, so my writing my book and the design of my book. I've got a whole board for the next books and the next digital resources that I'm creating. I've just created a menopause and nutritional blueprint, which is actually a nutritional system around menopause. I've got an entire board on that. And you can have for each workspace, I won't get into the nitty gritty of it, but if you're familiar with Trello, you're allowed 10 free boards in each workspace. So if you've already filled up your 10 boards and you're thinking, oh, it's told me I can't have any more boards, just create another workspace in your Trello account. And then you're allowed another 10 boards. So and I have multiple workspaces. I start a new workspace for every year. So I've probably got 50 or 60 boards now on Trello. And it's such a helpful thing. You can use the calendar power up. So that's a free, you're allowed one power up with a free account per board. And I use the calendar one so I can put to-dos in the calendar, and I can look at the calendar and I think, oh, I need to get that done by this. I need to send that email out by then. I need to get the cover design uploaded. I've got a provisional release date for my book coming up. So, I've got all these things that I can just look at. Think, okay, these are what I need to focus on next. Menopause Mondays, it's in my diaries every week, but I can see it on that board. So everything is there. And Trello, it's pretty easy to learn. I've actually got a playlist on my YouTube for Trello. I've not updated it for a while, but pretty much everything is still as it used to be. Got a bit better and a bit more succinct at giving instructions these days, but it's still a really helpful resource if you're new to Trello and you're wanting to know how to start a Trello board and how to use some of the more advanced strategies within Trello. So that is a really great schedule, but do what works for you. You might just like pen and paper. I have Trello, I have my written diary, I have a list of things, and then I also break down, I do my 2-week schedule where I've got the bigger projects broken down into bite-sized pieces as well. And that's the way I make it work in my mind. You need to find what works best for you. My brain is very fragmented. I have a lot of projects on the go, and I can't afford to let the spinning plates drop. There's too much at stake if I do. So I do have to be hyper organized as much as I can be. So you might be thinking, oh my God, that sounds really productive, and I don't like the idea of that. It's just that suits my schedule. It suits my life. It suits the way my brain works. Find something that works for you and then stick with it. Move your body, not just gardening or cleaning. You need to ideally get out into nature daily and walk. If you can get out earlier in the morning, that's even better, because that will help the secretion of your melatonin, which is your sleepy hormone. So if you can get out into the early daylight at the beginning of the day, that is going to have a positive impact on bringing your cortisol down and letting your melatonin rise when it needs to, ready for bedtime. But intentional exercise, not cardio or long distance cardio. You want the strength training ideally, even if you find it boring, is going to help burn up some of the cortisol, and it's going to, it just equips you. If you're physically strong, it makes you feel mentally stronger too, and it improves your systems around your body. So it improves your cardiovascular health, it improves your digestion. So many different aspects of a healthy life improve when you strength train. So I hope that's helped. If you are feeling in the thick of it and like a distracted squirrel on speed, you're not alone. And I just want you to understand that and appreciate that. Be kind to yourself. And I thank you for your company today. If you found this video helpful, then maybe share it with a friend who's going through the same old stuff. But otherwise, I will see you next week and look forward to catching you then.